Okay, hello everybody and welcome to the West County Concilio Latino meeting for Friday, June 17th. The Concilio Latino is a network for individuals and organizations working with the Latino community in West Contra Costa County, which meets monthly to identify needs, share resource information, and advocate for gaps in services for the Latino community at the local, state, and federal levels, and specifically address the needs of the monolingual Spanish-speaking community. Concilio Latino partners with coalitions of diverse civil and human rights organizations to advocate and participate in activities, events, and movements towards social justice for all underserved and underrepresented and targeted communities. So welcome, and let's see. We recognize that we are presently on the lands of the Chochenyo, Muwekma, Karkin, Ohlone peoples and acknowledge them as the first inhabitants of the land we currently occupy. So welcome, and the first thing we'll do is maybe go around and do some introductions. My name is Consuelo Lara, and I'm a retired teacher from this district, former school board member, and presently on the County Board of Education. And how about we start with Madeline?
I'm Madeline Cronenberg. I'm also a retired teacher from Hayward Unified, former school board member in this district. And at this meeting, I particularly represent the League of Women Voters of West Contra Costa County.
And how about Maria Resendez?
Good morning. My name is Maria Resendez, and I'm a student support supervisor right here in our district for the Expanded Learning Department.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Consuelo.
Okay, how about Jamila Smith-Foles?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jamila Smith-Folds. I am a teacher, a mommy of 3 school-age children, and a current school board trustee for West Contra Costa Unified School District.
Thank you so much. And Sandra Rodriguez.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Sandra Rodriguez. I'm from Colombia. I was invited for Professor Kristen Purcell, and just only to listen you. We have a lot of indigenous people in Colombia, and this is an interesting conversation with you. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Welcome. And how about Karen?
Hi, everyone. Sorry for having my camera off, but I like Sandra. I'm in the same class as her. I'm a student at UC Berkeley, and I like learning more about how we can teach citizenship and make people feel a part of, everything. So thank you.
Thank you and welcome, Karen. Ken Ryan. Oh, I think you froze, Ken.
My name's Ken Ryan. I'm in the. Can you hear me? No?
Yes, I can. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm Ken Ryan. I'm still an adult school teacher at West Contra Costa. Thanks to you, Consuelo and Madeline. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right. So let's go ahead and get started with our presenter, our speaker today, and he will introduce himself and share his information. Welcome, and we are honored to have you here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I don't know if you want to introduce the other people who just arrived.
Sure, Kristen Pursley.
Oh, yes. Hi, I'm Kristen Pursley. I'm with the West Contra Costa Adult Education as an ESL teacher and citizenship teacher. And I'm also the vice president of the Adult School Teachers Union.
Okay, great. And we'll have people join later and we'll introduce them at the end there. How about RDCSF? Do you want to introduce yourself? Okay. All right. So why don't we go ahead and get started?
Well, thank you again. My name is Alan Levanthal, and let me give you my background. I was with the American Museum of Natural History and the Department of Anthropology and Education in the early 70s. I've been involved in Indian affairs since 71. I became a state archaeologist at the University of Nevada, Reno in the 70s, 75, 78, 1978. I was hired at San Jose State University as the anthropology lab director. And in 1980, I met the then chairwoman of the Maloney tribe, who I took to the library, and she said she was an Ohlone Indian. And I said, I never heard of the Ohlones before, because I was a foreigner. Took her to the library. We pulled out Alfred Kroger's Quintessential Authority on the California Indians, published in 1925, Kroger being from UC Berkeley, one of the founding anthropologists, and his publication was published at the Bureau of American Ethnology. And he wrote in 1925, the Costanoan group is extinct for all practical purposes. So I said to this woman, Rosemary Canberra, that she's probably some other tribe, and she begged to differ with me and Kroger. She said she was an Ohlone Indian. Her mother's an Ohlone Indian. She was born on the Sonol Rancheria in 1911, baptized at Mission San Jose in 1912, along with other members of the tribe till the 1920s. So I started to work with them, and I retired, by the way, in 2019 after 41 years, but I still have departmental affiliation and I'm emeritus. Still have an office working with graduate and undergraduate students. Because time is short, I will give you the Reader's Digest version and taking you by the hand through a PowerPoint presentation to give you kind of a visual feel about the history and the heritage of the tribe. But just want to let you know that we have worked on archaeological sites going back 12,000 years in the Bay Area. So we have 12,000 years of human history. We've been working on modern and ancient DNA, connecting the living people to their ancestral remains. We just published in the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, the results of that, plus many other publications. So if you permit me to gain control so I can.
You can do it.
Slide presentation. That was good. Hang on a sec. Just trying to see where the. Tell me if you can see that. Can you see my desktop yet?
Not yet.
No.
Okay, let me go back to our control here and share screen.
Right.
There we go. Try that. How's that?
Much better.
Yeah.
Okay, usually we call this, this is the short version because time is short, to cover 12,000 years of human history. But anyway, sometimes we refer to the presentations entitled Back from Extinction. Anyway, the Maloney tribe of the San Francisco Bay. It's comprised of all the surviving Native American lineages who were Aboriginal, Greater San Francisco Bay region, whose ancestors were missionized into the 3 Bay Area missions, who comprised the historically BIA documented, federally recognized Verona Band of Alameda County. They became federally recognized through the Congressional Homeless California Indian Appropriation Acts of 1906 and 1908, and through other federal actions during later years. This is a sketch of them at Mission Dolores that some of you might have seen before, done by Luis Torres from the Russian expedition on the ship Auroric. So you can see the complexity of their ceremonial regalia. And at this time, the priests would allow distinguished visiting Europeans who visited for them to be regaled by songs and dances, but they had to be secular because the view was that anything to do with Indian religion was viewed as devil worshiping. The ancestors, as I said earlier, were missionized into missions San Jose, Santa Clara, and San Francisco. And it's through the mission records we were able, and other documentation, to trace them back to their Aboriginal villages. This is one person. She died in 1929. She was one of the last fluent speakers of the Chochenyo language. She was interviewed by anthropologists throughout the 20th century until her death. Her parents were married at Mission Santa Clara. She was born on the Bernal Rancho in the Santa Teresa Hills. And then as a child, she was baptized at Mission San Jose. Through the mission records, we were able to go back to their Aboriginal villages, direct lineal descent. And the arrows in red are the specific villages that the tribe has direct descent from. And the blue arrows represent the 3 Bay Area missions. So after missionization and secularization and the American conquest, we know that California became a state in 1850. President Millard Fillmore in Congress allocated $100,000 to send to California 3 commissioners, because the only legal instrument the federal government had to quiet the Aboriginal title to the land was through treaty. And between 1778 to 1869, there were 381 treaties negotiated. 371 of them were ratified by the Senate. 18 of those that were not ratified were the treaties of California. The 3 commissioners divided up California into 18 districts, 122 tribes signed on those treaties, and 8.5 million acres of land was to be set aside. When the treaties arrived back into Washington, D.C., the newly elected senators said the Indians should get nothing, and the warfare continued. As we have continue to do research on the demography of the California Indians, it is now estimated that the Aboriginal population of California was between 1 million to 1.5 million Indians at the time of Spanish contact. By the 1920s, there were less than 20,000 left alive. The Muwekmas of the San Francisco Bay probably numbered as high as 30,000. By 1920s, there were 62 people left alive. They were decimated. So after the treaties failed to be ratified, they were sealed into the secret archives of the United States Senate. But even though they were sealed, the only areas of the San Francisco Bay that were safe for California Indians were on the old Californio lands of the East Bay. So they had established rancherias at Pleasanton, Sonoma, Livermore, Niles, and further north at San Leandro, San Lorenzo. And the babies were still being baptized as Indians at Mission San Jose. Here's 2 of the Indian women or babies, Ambrosia Binoco, and at the bottom is Avelina Cornates Marine, who was born in 1863, baptized. And you can see the word Indios, noted by the priests. Some of the lineages enrolled in the Muwekma tribe are directly descended from Avelina Cornates Marine and her parents, Maria Frena and Pamphilio Yaquilamne. In the 1880s, Phoebe Hearst did not like living in San Francisco because of the weather. Her husband, Senator George Hearst, and her purchased one of the tribe's rancherias, the Alisal Rancheria near Pleasanton, around 1880s, and they built their mansion, which was La Hacienda del Pozo de Verona, after Verona, Verona, Italy. The Muwekma tribal community was later named the Verona Band of Alameda County by Special Indian Agent Charles Kelsey, and they were named after because they were residing next to the Verona Railroad Station built by Western Pacific Railroad. It was Phoebe Hearst who funded the anthropology department as a rival of Stanford's. And she invited Alfred Kroeber and his colleagues to come down to interview Indians for their languages and culture. So Kroeber, as you can see from his notebook, there's a fellow named Jose Guzman, there's Angela Colos, who we met earlier, and a woman named Magdalena Armija, who was living in Niles, and her family. These are just some of the Muwekmas. The Muwekmas appear on the 1900 Indian census. Not all of them appear there, but a lot of them do. At Niles Rancheria, there's George Santos, Jose Guzman, and Jose Guzman's granddaughter, Catherine Peralta. At Pleasanton, we see Angela Colos and her grandson, Joseph Garcia, and a woman below named Paula. So Paula is the woman on the extreme right, and she's standing next to Maria Trinidad Gonzalez Reyes. They lived at the Alisal Rancheria. And there's George and his wife, Pellegrina Pinos, at the Niles Rancheria. In 1904, this fellow, who's an unsung hero from San Jose, belonged to a philanthropic organization called California Indian Association. He went back to Washington, D.C. with a schedule. It's not quite a census, but a memorial about all the dying Indians of California that they were concerned about. And when he was back there, he and a clerk, the clerk from the Senate, identified a packet of papers sealed under secrecy under the Senate archives. So the Senate voted to remove the seal of secrecy, and they found the 18 unratified treaties of California. Congress freaked out. They said that they never quieted the Aboriginal title for the Indians of California. The Indians of California were dying at great rates. So they named him Special Indian Agent to conduct a Special Indian Census from 1905-06 and for Northern California. Geographically, Northern California was Los Angeles to the Oregon border. He had less than a year to crisscross the state to conduct a formal census. And he placed all of those Indian communities directly under the Indian Service Bureau, awaiting for land, because in 1906, Congress passed the Appropriations Act for the landless Indians of California. So this is a copy of his partial Indian census for Pleasanton, Jose Guzman, Angela Colos, for Niles, Magdalena Armija, and George Santos as an example. He made specific maps. This is the map of 1913, printed at Carlisle Indian Institute or School for Congress. And you can see it says Alameda 30 on the Rancheria, the Verona of the Rancheria. So again, if you look at where Los Angeles is, there was no superhighways. There were barely any automobiles. He literally had to crisscross the state all the way to the Oregon border to try to get the censuses going. And you can see the word Indian Rancheria. In 1910, some of the tribal members appear at Indiantown on the Pleasanton Township, and Angela Colos, Catherine Peralta, Mercedes Marine, who is the daughter of Avelina Marine, the baby that was baptized in 1863, Dario Marine, and Albert Marine. Albert Marine is the son of Mercedes, and he's also the grandfather of Monica Villariano, who is current vice chair of the tribe. And there's Trinidad Gonzalez. We saw her photo earlier. So some of the UC anthropologists, Berkeley anthropologists, interviewed Angela Colos, and you can see at the bottom, he wrote Muwekma. Muwekma means la gente, the people. And he's not the first one. Kroeber actually published the word Muwekma in his Language of the Chumash and Coast-Noan Indians at Berkeley, published at Berkeley in 1910. Plus it was recorded even earlier than that. While waiting for land, the landless Muwekma people, at least six men enlisted in the armed forces and served in the Army, Navy, and Marine Corps prior to and after America's declaration of war. 4 of them are buried at Golden Gate National Cemetery. They served from 1914, some of them, to 1920. One was severely wounded in the thigh. He was in the Marine Corps. He was a sergeant in the Marine Corps. So again, as they're waiting for land, as the landless Indians, this brilliant man, John Peabody Harrington from the Bureau of American Ethnology, interviewed Jose Guzman and Maria de los Angeles Colos, and he interviewed the other Costanoan speakers from Mission San Juan Bautista and also from Mission Carmel. So he is the main reason why we have such a rich cultural and linguistic background on the tribe. In 1924, Native Americans become citizens. And as a Citizen Act, I won't go into why, but I always thought that because 17,000 American Indians served overseas, and when they came back, they were still not citizens from World War I. So they realized they still own, California Indians still realized they own at least 8.5 million acres of land. And as citizens, they started to organize to sue the United States government. Congress freaked out and passed the 1928 California Indian Jurisdictional Act, which provided the state attorney general to sue the United States of America over the 8.5 million acres of land. And any settlement would not go to the Indians. It would go to the state of California, and the federal government would pull out of their fiduciary responsibility of our California tribes, essentially terminating all of the California tribes. A year before the 1928 Jurisdictional Act, a superintendent in Sacramento who was under investigation for dereliction of duty had removed 135 tribal groups as being eligible for land. Knowing that this act was coming up, the very first one he removed was the Verona Band of Alameda County, which he said lived near the town of Verona. There's never been a town of Verona in Alameda County. He never bothered to visit them. He never bothered to visit any of the other 134 tribes, and he removed them from the list of tribes eligible for land purchase as landless tribes. But nonetheless, they still enrolled. So here is Magdalena Armija Thompson and her children. The youngest one, Lawrence, was a Muwekma tribal councilman until he passed away in the late 90s. This is Catherine Peralta, who we saw earlier. The tribe is listed as Mission San Jose, another full blood. Francesca Guzman, who is the wife of Jose Guzman, part of her family enrolled with the Maloney tribe. Catherine Peralta's grandchildren continued the dances. This is the Bear Dance in 1982 up by Susanville, where these Muwekma Maidu Indians continued the traditions of the dances that were exported from Pleasanton in 1870s, from the 1870 ghost dance religion. This is Lucas Marine. You can see he says his mother, that he uses the tribal name Alones. He says she's Alones. The point though is that they're the only tribe to ever deploy the term Alone. The other people from Mission San Juan Bautista and Carmel never heard of the term until after Malcolm Margolin's nicely written but fictitious book came out, The Ohlone Way. He says, my mother's parents belonged to Mission San Jose. The records of her family ought to be found there. And he's there with his first wife and his son, who served in World War II. Here are some of the men who served in World War II. The middle top is her Lucas Marine's son. The man on the left was Lawrence Domingo Marine. He was too dark to go to school in the Bay Area. So they shipped him off to Sherman Institute 1931. He graduates Sherman Institute and he enlists in the Marine Corps in 1940, before Pearl Harbor. He is in every single major battle in the Pacific in the Marine Corps. The one in the middle below is Hank Alvarez. He's still alive. He's 100 years old. He was in the 101st Airborne Division. So you can see some of the men here. Here's Lawrence Domingo Marine's records from Sherman Institute. Some of the other men, the one in the lower middle is Robert Sanchez. He was in the 82nd Airborne Division, 508th Parachute Infantry Division. These guys served. Almost all the Muwekma men served in the Pacific and the European theaters. In the 1947, the tribal members joined the Bay Area Indian Council. This one is dated May 1947. They served again in the Korean War. In the 1960s, the Oakland Diocese was going to sell off the Ohlone Cemetery associated with Mission San Jose with 4,000 Indian burials buried there. And we're going to sell it off for construction and for road. Within living memory, their family members were still being buried at the Ohlone Cemetery in the late 1920s, and maybe later. So the tribe started to clean up the cemetery. The American Indian Historical Society, which was a nonprofit, started to work with the tribe to protect the Ohlone Cemetery. And by 1966, the title transferred to the American Indian Historical Society, and by 71 transferred to the Ohlone Indian Tribe Incorporated. Here's some of the Muwekma children. They show up in the newspapers, about 125 Indians in one cemetery. Congressman Don Edwards tried to put the cemetery into trust, and it was rejected by both National Parks and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, because at the end of World War II, the director of the Japanese American camps was later named Commissioner of Indian Affairs, and his job was to deal with the 70,000 plus American Indian soldiers coming back from World War II and Korea, and his job was to terminate every single tribe in the United States because they found gas, uranium, coal, oil on Indian lands, and they didn't want Indians to benefit from an economic triad between business, government, and tribes. So it was pretty harsh times. In 1950s, under the Settlement Act, there was checks issued for $150 with interest back to 1852 for the value of 8.5 million acres of land. By the 1960s and 70s, there was a settlement for 64,450,000 acres of land, almost all of California, with interest back to 1852. Those survivors who enrolled received checks for $668.61 for the value of almost the entire state of California. The federal courts would not allow them to have lawyers in the courts.
Come in.
Melvin Belli.
Hey. How are you,
Melvin Belli
Alexis?
was not allowed to
I'm
represent.
doing great. How can I help?
Maria,
Let me turn
could
off
you
the phone.
please, yeah, we got somebody. Maria, could you please mute yourself? Thank you.
Thank you. So Melvin Belli represented the Achamawi Atsagewe tribes, the Pit River tribes, and Berkeley did a film called 47 Cents an Acre in 1970. They interview him. He was forcibly removed from the federal courthouse, not allowed to represent the interests of his friends, of his clients. In 1989 to 1992, the Muwekmas repatriated 550 burials, ancestral remains from Stanford, in negotiation with them, especially because the museum was hit by the 1989 earthquake. Mercury News had done profiles on the tribal leadership. We had submitted 6 linear feet of documentation to the Bureau of Indian Affairs in Washington, D.C. And the Bureau said it would take over 24 years before they could look at the tribe's documents. And the tribe was the only one with a formal determination by that Bureau of previous unambiguous federal recognition and the fact that they were never terminated by any act of Congress. Only Congress can terminate a tribe status. So the tribe sued in 1999 saying, why should we wait 24 years or more if we're previously recognized? And Judge Ricardo Urbina slammed Interior, said they were disingenuous, and he agreed that in the early part of the 20th century, the Department of the Interior recognized Muwekma tribe as an Indian tribe under the jurisdiction based upon evidence. Here's the Bureau in May 24th, 1996, writing the Pleasanton or Verona Band of Alameda County was previously acknowledged between 1914 and 1927. And this is the tribe, some of the tribal members today at the campout at Lake Deval, at the East Bay Regional Park District in Livermore, another campout, cultural campout for the children. And we also contributed from 2012, 2014 to this great exhibit above and below the bay at the Oakland Museum. The tribe contributed the reinterpretation of the large Emeryville mound, which is not a shell mound, but a mortuary mound that contained thousands of burials. And this was the village seen adjacent or a distance away from the cemetery. So more recently, congressional representatives and state representatives have issued forth proclamations. Actually, proclamations go back to the early 90s from various state representatives. And this is Jim Bell from the state Senate, state of California, recognizing the Maloney tribe. So that's my last slide. I'm sorry for being a little long-winded, but if you have questions, let me give this back to you. Stop share.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I am so glad we are recording this and we will post it. We have a Facebook page and hope people will also post it in various places and share it. I have questions, but first I want to go around and you can either raise your hand, either digitally or just chime in if anybody has any questions. Oh, before we do that though, could you tell us about Charlene and Monica? I know they couldn't make it today, but could you tell us a little bit about them?
Yes, Charlene became tribal chair around 4 years ago. Like I said, the tribe started to organize around 1980 and submitted in their letter of intent to petition the government in 89. Charlene has been working tirelessly. She's a mother of 5, 6 children. So, and now she's out of the country dealing with some business as well. And then Monica, who is the granddaughter of Albert Ariano, who appears on the 1910 Indian census, she's the vice chair, and she's also on the list from the Native American Heritage Commission as the representative for the most likely descendant tribe when Native American burials are encountered at various sites. Collectively, we have been publishing and co-authoring together the results of the archaeological sites, of their excavations. They hire students to work with them. They just recently worked with San Francisco Public Utilities Commission by the Sunol Water Temple. If you haven't been there, it's incredible. But they just built the large, humongous educational facility called the Watershed, and there'll be a grand opening, I believe, later this year. But the tribe was responsible for removing around 100 of their ancestral remains in order to make way for the shed. And they will be reburying their ancestral remains close by to the original cemetery.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. And so does anybody have any questions?
Okay, I do. How can we help? It seems like what's happening here is I know that last night the Central Committee of the Democratic Party of Contra Costa County passed a resolution to support you. I know that other central committees have. Can you tell us exactly what we can do to help?
Well, there is a kind of a reluctance. California is a very strange state, by the way, when it comes to Indian affairs. So, like, first thing, years ago, I'm non-Indian. I have no Indian blood in me. But I could put in an application to be an Indian with the state's Native American Heritage Commission without any evidence. And archaeologists could hire me and pay me to overthrow the rights of documented tribes in the area. So the kind of the body politic in California is that there is great resistance in supporting the rights of tribes, and especially restoring the federal recognition of tribes that were never terminated, but have gone through the arduous process of demonstrating their continued existence as landless tribes. As I said, 12,000 years of human history in the Bay Area, and the Muwekmas are refugees within their own traditional homeland. And as you know, it's very expensive. So my suggestion was to give back the $150 and the $668 and say, we want our land back. You never bought it from us, really. You stole the land. But the object is not to make people feel guilty. If the tribe is federally recognized, they have to buy back land at today's fair market value. So years ago, they could buy back 9 acres of their Alisal Rancheria when it was up for sale in the late 90s for over $10 million. So basically what people have been doing is that one way was formulated to work with the California state legislature for them to put forward a joint resolution to encourage Congress to reconsider, because that was what was recommended by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The Bureau said the Muwekmas are a historic tribe. They were never terminated. They recommended federal legislation to be restored as a federally recognized tribe. So in order, and you know, there are so many issues going on in our country today and in California today. How do you gain notice? How do you tell the story? So one way of trying to gain notice was to get good people like yourselves and organizations to contact our elected representatives, both on the congressional level and the state level, in writing letters of support that the tribe should be reinstated as a federally recognized tribe. They're eligible, if they are reinstated, they're eligible to buy back land. They're eligible to have housing, to apply for housing urban development grants, to have educational grants, so the next ensuing generations could go to school. And this is what's been going on. And we've been working collaboratively with scholars at San Francisco State, at Stanford University, Santa Clara University, San Jose State University, Cal State East Bay, and even at Berkeley, and co-authoring and publishing about the tribe's history and heritage, and the various studies that we have done, both historical and scientific. But the object is to formulate a strategy whereby we can educate the greater Bay Area, because many people never heard of Muwekma before. In 1992, when we went to the Human Relations or the Human Rights Commission of San Francisco, there was one commissioner who said, he declared, he said, who are these Muwekma? I never heard of them. Who is this fake tribe? Who is this fake tribe? So we gave them a presentation, demonstrated that they have served in the armed forces from World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, and some are still serving today. And that kind of woke him up a little bit, and then he voted to support the tribe's reaffirmation as a federally recognized tribe. But because of a lot of misinformation and a lot of deception in the dynamics of Indian affairs and opposition from gaming tribes don't want the Muwekma to be federally recognized. And you have to understand that the Gaming Regulatory Act came in 1988. And the only way a tribe could game is by getting permission from the state legislature and signed off by the governor as a compact of revenue sharing. But the Muwekmas were involved prior to 1988 in trying to restore their federal recognition. Like I said, they saved their Ohlone cemetery in 1960s, and they're still being assailed as being a fake tribe. Yet the federal courts, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, said that they are a historic tribe and they were never terminated. So this is what happens when tribes that are reduced down to invisibility, and if you're invisible, you're rendered inconsequential. In fact, up until the time when I started to work with them, and they started to show people their Bureau of Indian Affairs enrollments, they were viewed with contempt and suspicion that they were just fake Indians. But 6 linear feet of documentation, you saw some of the documentation. We're trying to restore, they've been trying to restore their rights since 1927. But they figured that as an anthropologist affiliated with an institution of higher learning, and my colleagues throughout the Bay Area and other institutions would help lend voice and credibility to the rights of this tribe. And when we talk about social and economic and ecological justice, for these California tribes, these words are just fleeting. They're fleeting, they're nice, but they have no meaning. So one meaningful way is to communicate to our elected officials. And as I noted in an email just earlier today, that the hearing on Senate Joint Resolution was held on the 15th of June. And with the Democrats in power, they would not allow it to get out of committee. So you have to ask the question, these political parties that have power, are they just giving lip service when they use words of social justice? They're very good people who tried to get this going in the state Senate and the state assembly. They really do care. They're very serious about doing this, but they need to hear more from constituency.
Sure. Yeah, so it really does sound like there's a lot that we could do and be doing, starting with educating ourselves about this issue, sharing it with others, and bringing light to our organizations that we all belong to, and as individuals, putting that kind of pressure to our policymakers. So if anybody, I'm sorry, Madeline, did you have any other comments?
I have one more question, and that has to do with curriculum. You mentioned that there was curriculum, and we're talking to a lot of educators here. And I think each and every one of the school districts who are connected to this, to the land, need to talk about that. I mean, we do it, we give lip service to the land acknowledgement, but why aren't we teaching our children about the land?
That's a very good point. So again, since 1980s, the tribal leadership and I have gone to various school districts, schools, all the way out to Turlock and Monterey and elsewhere to do more comprehensive presentations than the one I've given you today. In the early 2000s or mid 2000s, we worked with the East Bay Regional Park District with personnel there, because the tribe has been giving presentations at Coyote Hills, East Bay Regional Park District, which is part of their ancestral homeland, since the 1980s. And so some of the talented people there asked the tribe to have input on school curriculum, and that's online. So that curriculum is online from East Bay Regional Park District, and so it's been published and is available to teachers. Why?
Where
it's
is
not-
that, sir?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Excuse me. Where would I find that curriculum?
If you
online?
just type in East Bay Regional Park District and the word curriculum, I'm certain it will come up,
Okay.
because in the past, we've shared that URL with various teachers and schools and school districts. Some of the schools in the South Bay, like the Harker schools, they have put together commemorative plaques. Some of Chabot College, for example, had a flag raising that they will permanently fly the Muwekma flag at Chabot College. But for school teachers, this was a good start to go to that curriculum and then to recalibrate. Let me say, I had my 8 cups of coffee. So in 1980, we went to History San Jose with one of their board of directors, a powerful lawyer named Austin Warburton, and he offered to pay out of his own pocket the development of curriculum for the San Jose school districts, and also to pay for a reconstructed structure for the Ohlone. It was rejected because they said, no one is interested in the Indians. And the second thing, the Indians have nothing to do with the American experience. So even today, there is nothing to show about the Muwekma Ohloni's history and heritage at History San Jose. We're still trying to work on it. But I mean, I'm at it for 42 years. I had a little more hair when I started, but we're not giving up. The object is we're committed as educators, and so are obviously the young mothers of the Muwekma are also interested and have volunteered their time since I've been working with them since 1980. But that's a good place to start with that curriculum. I don't know if you tried it or not.
I just found it. I'm going to post it to our page, and I'm
Yes.
going to send it out to everybody. I took the materials, just so you know, I took the materials that you did send links to, and I put them all up in a Google Drive, and I'm going to add this and make the whole thing public so that it's accessible to everybody who's to everybody, period.
We've also been working with museums, as you saw from the Oakland Museum. That was one of the, my background, as I said, with American Museum, but the Above and Below the Bay was one of the most impressive museums exhibitions. And they painted on the walls these incredible murals. And now those incredible murals are painted over. Unfortunately, there was no way to preserve them.
Jeez. Wow. Well, thank you very much. Does anyone have any other questions or comments about this presentation? It just has been so rich, and it's just the beginning. I know, like you said, you had to condense this down into just a few minutes, but it's just wonderful. Thank you so much.
And I just want to say I'm available afterwards. I mean, not only today, but anytime anybody wants to raise questions or desire additional information, more than happy to send you our publications.
Oh, that's great. That's good to know. All right. Any other comments here, questions?
Thank you. It was really interesting.
I know it's a tidal wave, a tsunami of information, and you have to kind of digest it and then formulate ways to interface with it. But
Yeah.
I thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, and knowing about the, what is it? It's called the SJR 13, isn't it? That's the.
Yeah, the Senate Joint Resolution 13, which now has to wait until next year before it can be reintroduced or reconsidered again. As you can see, things move in a rather glacial fashion, as everyone knows.
Mhm.
Yes, we do. We do. All right, so we're going to pass that information on. Social media organizations, etc. So I want to thank you for coming and for all this information. It's just been wonderful. Anything else you can send us, like if there's any updates about things that you think we could share. We have hundreds of people on this email list, so we can send that out if other things that you want to share with us as well.
I
So,
will talk
please.
to the tribal chair when she gets back
Yes.
and the vice chair, because at 11 we have a Zoom with the Museum of Los Gatos, where we're doing an exhibit on the tribe's history and heritage there as well. Thank you
Wonderful.
again.
Thank you so much.
Have a good morning.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodness, that was just amazing. It was incredible. We've had a couple people. Let's see. Betty, would you like to introduce yourself? Oh, you got you're muted.
Betty Brown, resident of Kensington, active with East Bay Peace Action and Healthcare for All California.
Very good. Thank you. All right. So there's a lot of resources that we're sharing. There's some on the email that I sent out, as well as on the agenda, so we can keep ourselves informed about this. And right now we can go around and share any announcements from our organizations. And we're also going to have talk about adult ed as well. So are there any information? Is there any announcements from our members here?
Yeah, I wanted to make an announcement. I think I sent you about the needs assessment.
Yes, yes. Go ahead.
Is this a good time?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Is it possible for me to share my screen?
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much for letting me talk about this a little bit. I'm one of my jobs at the adult school is I'm the coordinator for the EL Civics program. And we are supposed to periodically do a needs assessment with the community and with our students. And I thought this would be a really great group to ask to give us some feedback. This is a form that I put together to assist with the needs assessment. And so the civic participation program is done through the ESL program. It's done in the ESL classes. And there are actually very large number of topics that are approved by the state of California. And so what I did here was I put like all the topics, and the asterisks are the ones that we already do. So we already have a curriculum for banking, for housing, for the school system, for disaster preparedness, which is really popular, family literacy, nutrition, workers' rights, and the environment. Those are the ones we are already approved to do. So, so what we're looking at is, is there something important that we should maybe be looking into developing that we aren't doing? But also, do you think the ones that we have are the appropriate ones? So, or are helpful, or are there things maybe we should drop and pick up something else? So I'm just asking those who can, those who are interested. I'm hoping that this could go out on the Concilio distribution list for those who want to do it. And just sort of tell me, what are your top 3 of all of these topics? And they could be the ones we're already doing. So if you think the ones we're doing are pretty important, you could include that in your 3. So I'm not saying only new ones, but are we on the right track? Are we offering the right topics? And of course, we'd love to hear about other possible topics that are not on the list. This doesn't include the career training ones that we have, because that's kind of a different program. This is really just for civic participation. So any questions about that? I just thought if I introduced it before sending it out, it would be a little easier for people to understand.
Yeah, I have a quick question. This is great. This is exactly, and the more community people you can get to respond to this, the better. And parents.
Parents, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of parents. Are you going to do it in Spanish at all?
That's a good idea. I'll get it translated into Spanish. Yeah, I wish I could get it into some of the other languages too. And now that we have quite a lot of others as well besides Spanish speakers. So yeah, so we'll see about that as well.
And what's the deadline or that the time you want it by?
Yeah, if I could get it by the end of July, that would be good. Mainly just because I don't want to have too long of a deadline. If we send it out now and the deadline is September, it probably won't happen. But I want to give people enough time, and I would love it if people would share it broadly. That would be great. And my work email is on the form, and people can just send it to me, and you don't even have to use the form. You can just say, here's my top 3 in an email, and that's perfectly fine. The survey is really just as a aid.
Yeah. And so we'll definitely send this out. So when you send it to me to send out, will there be a letter like with some details, or should I just send the form out? Or
I tried to put the information at the top of the form.
Okay.
Hopefully that's enough. And then people have my email if they want to, if there's something they don't understand or I left out. They can always email me, and I'll be happy to clarify whatever isn't clear.
Yeah. Oh, this is wonderful. This is great. And a lot of us, people here and on the emails, work with families, parents. And so if they could pass it on to their networks, I think that would be a wonderful thing to do. And one of the things we want to do here at the Concilio is and I remember when I first started facilitating, there was I don't know if it was standing committee report or something from adult ed. And I'd like us to go back to that. Adult ed is so important to our community. I've said this over and over. I mean, ESL, GED, citizenship classes, job training. This is essential. I know there are lots of districts that just dropped and cut out adult ed. This community absolutely needs a thriving adult ed program, no doubt. So, and we have to fight for it. We have to really fight for it. So we do want you or someone from adult ed to come every month and share updates. And so you might want, what's the update now with the status of adult ed in our district?
No, Ken, do you want to do an update? Ken is the president of our union.
Welcome, Ken.
And I'll be happy to also chime in.
Kristen, why don't you chime in to start with?
Chime in first, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so I guess so there's been a lot of uproar about our union because Ken and I were actually fired last week, but then rehired. It was a real short, we got an email saying that we were released at the end of the school year, which would have been June 30th. And we tried, you know, and there was no warning. We had no idea this was coming whatsoever. Both of us have been here. I've been with the Adult School 25 years. Ken is in there 28 years. And as we tried to find out what was going on, it was clear that it hadn't been run by the Board of Education. They didn't know anything about it. Our vice principal didn't know anything about it. I'm still not quite sure where it came from. The district is now saying that it was a clerical error, but if it was a clerical error, they did it twice because they sent us a first notice, and then our vice principal that said we were part-time teachers and we've been working full-time. So I think our vice principal then said to HR, hey, this is wrong, they're not part-time. So HR then carefully reworded the thing to say, you're released as a teacher, not a part-time teacher. So very carefully done if it was really a mistake. So, and we actually had a rally and had a lot of people speak at the school board meeting. There's a lot of us getting fired is sort of like the tip of the iceberg. There's been a lot of, well, we're saying union busting, basically. Part of that being that our contract has been really held up. We're still negotiating our first contract. We were recognized in 2017. We started bargaining in 2018. It's a first contract. You expect it to take a while, but this year has just there's been no progress. The district keeps coming up with roadblocks. They basically called our bargaining unit into question, saying, we don't think you can represent all these different people that are all teachers for the adult school, which is what we said we would represent. And as far as we can tell, yes, we can legally represent all of those folks. We don't really know exactly how this idea began, that we couldn't represent them, and there was no objection raised back in 2017 when the district recognized us. There's also been a big reorganization of the ESL program. And one of the things that we're most concerned about is, we used to have a lot of classes in the community. We used to have a lot, we had like about 10 elementary schools and a few other community sites. And our principal was completely resistant to ever going back there. He basically said, no, we don't want to be in those sites anymore. We're going to have some online classes, and then we're going to have in-person classes at particular adult school controlled sites, and that's it. And the thing is that before, when we had all those offsites, we had a very large program, and the program is down to less than half. And it's probably because we're not at those sites. And we can't go back everywhere. I mean, the COVID is still happening. There's been rearrangement of some of the schools where they're using the classrooms we used to use, but there are schools that want us back. There's one school at least that's been asking for us to be back all year. So, we really want that looked at again. Our older adults program, we actually hopefully found some funding for it through the county, so that the problem with the state funding having been canceled a while back will no longer be a problem as long as this county money comes through. And so we really want to encourage our board to, support that application for the county money and keep us updated on how that's working out. So yeah, so that's what's going on. Betty, did you have a question?
Yeah, Betty.
Well, question, comment. I
Yeah.
wonder if some of your difficulties are similar to some things that East Bay Peace Action has had in relation to administrative approval of displays in 7 school sites in the district, secondary primarily. And the fact that we had a new superintendent and a new executive assistant to the superintendent, that we had to seek help from one of the school board members to finally get our communications straightened out and authorizations issued. Anyway, I just thought I would share that with you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And
Great, thank you, Betty. Any other comments or questions about the adult ed? Okay, in the district right now, there's a big, the development of the community schools. And there's funding for that. They released a huge list of schools who are gonna become community schools. An aspect of community schools, every single one of those schools have to provide resources for adults, for the parents of those schools. And that includes, ESL classes, every kind of, assistance to the community and to the parents as possible. And so there needs to be, partnership with adult ed and any one of those community schools. So if anything, adult ed needs to expand because of this growing community schools, developing more community schools. I taught at Helms, we were community schools for years, and there's a huge, almost a wing of offices and resources for parents, and they'd have classes, and adult ed was there. And so that needs to happen at all those schools. They're saying are now going to become community schools. So if anything, you need to be expanding, because what are they going to do? They're going to reinvent the wheel. Where are they going to get teachers to have those classes? We've got that here. And, I just have to say, when you get administration from outside, doesn't know our community, they just have a narrow perspective. They don't know the history. They don't understand, acknowledge all the resources we already have going on. And it's just it's just sad that that's happening. But I think, the community schools movement, and I know the union, the teacher union, is very involved with the developing of the community schools.
yeah,
So, yeah. So we can get that, partnership stronger, I think, between those.
that would be great. Yeah.
Anything else, comments? Yes, Ken. Yes.
Did anyone notice at the school board meeting if the board approved the hiring of a new adult school principal? I thought that was going to happen this Wednesday. I was at a Central Labor Council meeting trying to get their support during the school board meeting.
Yeah, and I didn't notice. I was listening for that because I was at the meeting. And when they announced new people who'd been hired, they didn't announce a new adult school principal.
No.
And Erica said, I think just yesterday, we don't have a principal yet. So I don't know what's going on, because supposedly there was someone, hired, right? Or someone who was,
I thought there was. I thought that was going to happen.
Okay, so
Because,
not yet.
so I was hopeful about that, but
Okay.
because I was I'm hoping the new, whoever the new principal is paying attention to what's going on, and will chart a different course than the past one.
Yeah, absolutely. And so everybody will hear, and when we post this and people watch it, please let it be known how you feel about adult ed. Communicate with the board members, the superintendent, everybody who makes these decisions. They need to know how strongly we feel about adult ed.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
I think the district is very focused on a strategic plan, right? And so you go along with them. That's where their energy is. And that strategic plan is certainly going to address inequities and equity issues, right? I'm certain of that because they had an equity audit. They will be aware of that. I think that the adult ed teachers being in the community and part of community schools should be like the centerpiece of that. Because what it does is create the opportunity for family engagement. And it puts resources behind that. It's not just a talking point, and yes, we will have a site council and invite people to come. No, we're going to have what we've always had. We're going to have the classes. We're going to have the babysitting. We're going to remove the barriers that exist for these parents and these communities to be successful. And we should lift that up into the strategic plan, because I'm not sure that has happened. So there's maybe Miss Smith Folds can help me. There's a coalition of a guiding coalition group who could be contacted. I mean, there are steps that are about to be taken to finalize the strategic plan and where they're going to put their money, which is the whole thing. And what's happened now is they've taken their money away from adult ed, when honestly, at the same time, they have their talking points are that this is what they believe in and want to support.
I think one of the things that's abundantly clear is that the district is not centering, focusing, even including adult ed in any of its planning. It's clear. It can't be any more crystal clear than it is now. So it's one of those things that if you have a guiding coalition and you're supposed to represent the community in the district, and you don't have someone specifically that speaks to older adult issues, then you're not really including older adults. If you don't have someone that has special ed knowledge on a guiding coalition, then you're not doing it. The district is K-12 focused. They're not TK, they're not adult ed, they're not transition, they're not special education, they're K-12 focused. And until everyone starts realizing that K-12 focus only is inequitable, then you're going to have the same barriers, problems that you have right now. But as Ms. Cronenberg knows and Consuelo knows, it takes three. It takes three. At Wednesday night, Trustee Reckler could have motioned for it to be put on the budget, not just say it. Saying it does nothing. Saying anything on the board does nothing. It has to be a policy in place. It has to be motion. Let me see it in the budget now. I motion that it be put as a line item now, but it takes three people to fight all of these fights. So I would suggest that the community pushes on the integrity of three board members to where they are willing to say it in public on the dais by making a motion. That's the only way that this is going to be able to be held to any accountability, because what's happening is what we said was probably going to happen from the beginning. I know Trustee Cronenberg said it. They're going to run the clock, which they've ran the clock. They're going to continue to just box check, which they've box checked. They're just saying it and not really putting any action behind it. And they're going to continue to lip service. It's all the things that are happening now. The only way to stop the district from doing that in any issue is to make a policy, because policy is where the accountability lies. That's the only way. So until adult ed gets agendized, which I know I've been calling for it for the last, I don't know how long, until it gets agendized, until policy is made, until asks are requested and answered on the dais, nothing's going to change. You did not have an adult school principal come to the board. It didn't come to the board. No name came to the board. So again, we are in 7 weeks until summer ends, 7 to 8 weeks until summer ends, and then you're going to start in a deficit situation. You're going to start having to fight the same battles that you had to fight before. Is it going to be online? Are we going to have more online classes than not? All of the issues don't do anything but sit dormant, and then they come back around until policy is made. So pardon my frustration, but after 2 years of this now, it's like it only works. The only movement you had is because you had to have older adults and everybody come out to a board meeting to push something that should not have been a fight. It shouldn't have been a fight. That shouldn't, working on a contract for 4 to 5 years should not have to be a fight. So these things are just it's infuriating that the character and the value of the board, not the district, the board. It's the board issue because the board sets the values for the district. We're policymakers. So what you value, you put in policy. The board doesn't value older adult education. The board only focus on K through 12. This is a board issue. And it's not just this board issue, but it is a board issue that has to be resolved by pushing on the integrity of 3 board members. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Trustee Smith Folds. Always enlightening to hear your suggestions or your point of view. Thank you for your strong activism. It's very, very appreciated. Absolutely. Okay. Anything else? Any last words or comments or feelings? Or we got a lot of work to do. I have a question. We usually skip July. There's always so much to deal with. I was wondering about skipping July or not. I don't have anybody lined up for that. And so I was just curious about people's thoughts about it. Okay to skip July or not? What do you think? Oh. All right, well, we'll think about it then. All right, okay, so I think we're done for today. Thank you, everyone. And thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, wait a minute. I think I see Betty. Betty, could you please unmute?
Are you saying skip July, but keep August on the calendar?
Yes. Or skip
Okay, thank you.
August or July. Okay. I'll let you know, Betty. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
In
All
the
right.
recording,